Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. Do you still remember Castle Nathria? You know, the expansion we had before March of the Lich King, and expansion that was largely defined by its super powerful neutral legendary cards. We had cards like Prince Renathal, your deck size and starting held up 40, Theotar the Mad Duke, a 4-mana card to discover a card in each player's hand and swap them, Sire Denathrius, endlessly infusing every time a friendly minion dies to deal more damage amongst all enemies, and Kael'Thas Sinstrider, a 6-mana 4/7, every third minion you play each turn costs 0. Obviously, all of these cards have subsequently been nerfed. Renathal now only gives you 35 health, Theotar costs 6 mana, Denathrius takes 2 minions to infuse, and Kael'Thas costs 8 mana. And the popularity of all of them has collapsed. There are still people playing Renathal, there are still people playing Theotar. They probably shouldn't. It's kind of hard to see where the uses are. Like, Renathal still goes into Beast Hunter, that's still fine. Theotar, it's really hard to find the proper use for the current version of Theotar. There's still some people playing Sire Denathrius, also they probably shouldn't. Yeah, even Imp Warlocks have been ditching that card. And Kael'Thas, well, Kael'Thas nerfs just killed the card entirely. But now that all of these very definitive features of Murder at Castle Nathria have been removed, then what is left of Castle Nathria? And remember, this is only the previous expansion. It's just one expansion ago. This is not even old stuff. Let's take a journey into all of the classes, what they were about in Castle Nathria, and what still remains. First of all, we have Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter had two things going for it in Murder at Castle Nathria. One was the Relic package and the other was the Aggro package. This aggro and then just ditching cards from your hand back to your deck and drawing more cards stuff. Aggro Demon Hunter, not seeing play right now. Relic Demon Hunter, after Relic of Dimensions was nerfed from this 5 mana to 6 mana, Relic Demon Hunter hasn't seen that much play either. It's still okay, the Relic package is still okay, but just doesn't see that much play because there are better ways to play Demon Hunter, especially with the quest line. But there are a couple of cards from Castle Nathria that actually see play now that didn't see much play before. Dispose of Evidence is one of them. Dispose of Evidence used to be, of course, built for that aggro Demon Hunter. It is nowadays used in more combo fashion together with Lady Steno just to have more activations. And then Sinful Brand. Sinful Brand originally just completely flopped, there was no use for it. Brand an enemy minion, whenever it takes damage, deal 2 damage to enemy hero. But now, thanks to Felderai Warband and this rise of this more OTK-ish, more combo-ish quest Demon Hunter, Sinful Brand actually sees play and is one of the key cards in that combo. And that Felderai Warband, deal 4 damage, if your deck has no minions, summon 4/1/1 Illidari with Rush. So you can shoot face, and then you can Sinful Brand a minion, and you will have 4 minions that you can go with into that Sinful Branded minion, just deal a lot of damage, especially with double Sinful Brand. So the way Demon Hunter was built for Castle Nathria isn't really used that much nowadays, although the Relic package probably is going to see more play at some point. But some of the cards that even didn't see play then do see play now. Then we have Druid. Castle Nathria Druid had a couple of teams. There was this Ramp Nature team with Topior the Shrubagazer, Battlecry for the rest of the game after you cast a nature spell, summon a 3/2 well with Rush. And then there was this Death Rattle team with Cecily of the Fey God. And neither of the legendary cards see any play right now. There are still some aggro druids around. They don't use pretty much anything from Castle Nathria. The archetype existed before. And then there are Ramp Druids around, and Ramp Druids do use Widowbloom Seeds, man. 4 mana 3/2 Battlecry, draw a nature spell, gain an empty mana crystal. So Ramp Druid still use Ramp card, but largely whatever was built for Druid for Castle Nathria just doesn't exist in the game anymore. You could say that Hunter has been more successful in its Castle Nathria cards because Wild Spirits, summon 2 different dormant Wild Seeds, make Wild Seeds awaken 1 turn sooner. The whole Wild Seed package, it's a pretty small package. You can put it into a Face Hunter deck, you can put it into a Beast Hunter deck, you can put it into a Shockspeeder Hunter deck, you can just pretty much put it into any kind of deck. And you play a Hunter deck and you can use those Wild Seeds in some way. Also, many of the Wild Seed decks, but not all, use Aralon, the legendary card from that package, which is now one of the best performing legendary cards from Murder at Castle Nathria. Also collateral damage. It was played originally in Face Hunter, then it was too slow, and now it's sort of back again. So it has been going back and forth, but overall it's a fairly strong card. Very individual card in that it didn't have much other support in Castle Nathria. It was just this one card that you can put into stuff whenever the meta is suitable. And then Castle Nathria had this Infuse Rush Beast style with Shade Hound, with the location, and those are just pretty much gone. The Infuse Beast thing just doesn't work. Well, it never worked. Also some fun things going on with Mage. Castle Nathria Mage. What was Castle Nathria Mage? Castle Nathria Mage was largely about secrets. Secret package got a lot of support, never succeeded in Standard, but it sees a lot of play in Wild. Stuff like Conjurer, yeah, you're going to rock with that in your Wild Secret Mage. Just don't try to do that in Standard, it just doesn't work. Then Frozen Touch wasn't very great early on, but now there's an aggro mage deck that actually makes good use of Frozen Touch. Frost spells are just good for that aggro Frost mage deck. And then there was this big volatile skeleton package. And what is funny is that the aggro Frost mage does make use of the volatile skeletons with the Nightcloak Sanctum, with 6-mana spell, but Kael'Thas, the inevitable, the pinnacle of this volatile skeleton package, it just doesn't see any play nowadays. Even the slower mage decks just don't use that. It just no longer very useful. So some remnants of this mage from Castle Nathria remains, but much of it never caught on, and the parts that remain are also now in a bit of a different context. Castle Nathria Paladin was focused on two themes. There was Silverhand Recruits, and then there was Pure Paladin. And how is that going? It's also going in some ways that are not really the ways Castle Nathria used the cards. Because the Silverhand Recruit, there are some Silverhand Recruit Paladin decks around, but they're not very strong. Pure Paladin. Yes, there are Pure Paladin decks around. Mostly they are very aggressive decks, and they are decks that are making good use of the new March of the Lich King cards. And funnily enough, Elitist Snob, which was like the epitome of this Pure Paladin card, the pinnacle, the one defining Pure Paladin payoff card, is not strong enough to see play. There have been some attempts to revive it, so maybe there is still a chance for the card, but largely it's not played even though Pure Paladin is played. Order in the Court is played, but Order in the Court is played because you can find Cariel, and Cariel was much earlier card, so okay, I guess maybe it counts. Sinful Sous Chef is played, but that's because Paladin just doesn't have any good 1-drops, so, well, that's a 1-drop that gives you more cards to play, so you have at least some stuff to play. And what is probably the strongest Paladin card of Castle Nathria at the moment is actually the Countess. If your deck has no neutral cards, add 3 legendary invitations to your hand. But Countess is also largely played because Blood Crusader can then give you a big swing turn with that. Although right now some decks are cutting the Crusader because then you take a lot of damage if you do the Crusader way, but they still find room to play Countess in slower matchups where there is more time. And surprisingly enough, Countess, even though it wasn't spectacular at any point in Castle Nathria, has turned out to be one of the Paladin cards with more longevity. The archetypes Castle Nathria supported for Priest were largely this kind of Boon Priest, where you just go in boom with big minions very early on, and Thief Priest, especially with a card like Identity Theft. And what has happened? Well, Priest is not seeing much play right now. When Priest does see play, it can be an Undead Priest, which is new from March of the Lich King. It can be a Bless Priest that makes good use of Boon of the Ascended, one of the key cards in that archetype. And that Thief Priest it just doesn't exist. Although Identity Theft can be used in slower priest decks just because of the overall value. I mean, discovering 2 cards from your opponent means that you have a pretty good chance to pick up 2 cards that are actually useful to you. And you have very little that you can do at 3 mana with priest anyway, so just a strong individual card, even though the overall Thief package is not used and has not turned out to be very useful. Rogue had 2 things in Castle Nathria as well. One was this Miracle team with lots of cards, playing cards, Sinstone Graveyard, Necrolord Draka, Scribbling Stenographer. And that package actually sees play in some ways, because Necro Draka, actually, the legendary card, does not see a lot of play, but Sinstone Graveyard and Scribbling Stenographer do see a lot of play in this current iteration of Miracle Rogue, which is the basic idea that Castle Nathria was trying to promote, rogue deck that plays a lot of cards and gets a big payoff. Then Castle Nathria also had stuff going on for Secret Rogue. They even tried to buff Halkias, tried to make it something, but it just sucks, so that archetype just never took off, not even originally. The Shaman legacy from Castle Nathria is also intriguing. Castle Nathria started with 2 Shaman archetypes, like play with Totems with the Stonewright or play Evolve with Baroness Vashj, the big payoff cards. Stonewright is a huge payoff card, without which Totem Shaman is completely useless, and even with Stonewright, Totem Shaman is still almost completely useless, so it's not played anyway. But what is fun is that Evolve Shaman has now become one of the top meta contenders, and it makes heavy use of the cheaper Evolve cards from Castle Nathria, Primordial Wave, Mug Pools, and Convincing Disguise, but Baroness Vashj does not fit into the deck. It's just not strong enough. Like Necro Draka, Baroness Vashj, many of these key legendary cards that were supposed to be the pinnacle of their archetypes just turn out to be too weak to see play, whereas the cheaper support cards are combined with cards from other expansions in order to fill the deck. The one exception is Imp Warlock. Imp Warlock, an archetype that was largely built from Castle Nathria, very single expansion type of package, Imp King Rafaam, Impending Catastrophe. It's still a good deck, it still sees play. Imp King Rafaam, still an excellent card in that deck. The other idea that Castle Nathria supported for Warlock was some kind of shadow spell thing, and that just never worked, not even originally. But Rafaam, actually a strong legendary card from Castle Nathria that still sees play. And finally there is the Castle Nathria Warrior. Castle Nathria gave Control Warrior a couple of weird cards that didn't turn out to be very strong. Like Call to the Stand, I have tried to play this sort of disruption heavy warrior with Call to the Stand, and sometimes I've had some results, but overall stats would indicate that no, Call to the Stand Warrior is not a thing. However, Enrage Warrior does make good use of Castle Nathria cards, especially Anima Extractor, the best card from the set for that deck, one of the best cards for the deck overall, and the weapon as well, Imbued Axe, strong card, powerful buffs for your damaged minions, and it's a pretty decent deck overall. However, the legendary cards for Warrior are again a little bit disappointing, especially Remonia, Living Blade. There was a lot of hype about Remonia when Remonia was revealed. Unique mechanic, beautiful new things coming to Hearthstone. Rush, it attacks you, equip it, you can swing with it, then it becomes a minion again and you can rush, and just wonderful things. Except that they're pretty useless, and Remonia is pretty much useless, so okay, maybe not. So overall, what are we left with when we think about murder at Castle Nathria? Almost all of the cards that were really defining the set have been nerfed and don't see that much play anymore. Many of the pinnacle legendaries of archetypes, Kel'Thuzad, Draka, Vashj, that were designed to be like the best card in those decks, and just have fallen by the wayside and they're not being useful at all. But Murder at Castle Nathria did give a whole bunch of support tools, support packages, support cards, like that Sinful brand for Demon Hunter. I mean, alone it doesn't do anything, and it doesn't do anything in the context of Castle Nathria, but it does work with other cards. The Wild Seed package for Hunter, another thing that doesn't really do anything alone, but that does work in connection with other things. Relic package for Demon Hunter, Sinstone Graveyard for Rogue. Lots of things that require support from multiple expansions, but that have found ways to be key parts of decks, just not quite in the way that Castle Nathria designed them. So out of that original Castle Nathria look and feel, it's pretty much only Imp King Rafaam and Imp Warlock that is left, and everything else has kind of fallen by the wayside. But that obscures a little bit the fact that we actually play with a bunch of Castle Nathria cards still, they just don't play such a visible role as they used to. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.